President Badejo, I believe that we will be ready to begin. I again want to remind anyone who is looking to listen to language interpretation to ensure that you select the language interpretation button and select English or Spanish. All attendees and commissioners, other participants in the meeting must select English or Spanish. Favor de hacer clic en el botón de interpretación de idiomas y seleccione inglés o español. Todos los participantes en la reunión necesitan seleccionar inglés o español. Director Segura, I believe that we were prepared to start the meeting. President Badejo?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome to our Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission regular meeting, September 20th, 2022. I would like to, we have gone over the language interpretations, and so we will commence in the roll call and call to order. Rebecca Guerrera, you have started, we are recording. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, my name is Jacqueline Badejo, and I am the president of the commission. Today, I will be serving as the chair presiding over this meeting. Again, today is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, and the time is 1:05 p.m. To begin, we will establish the quorum for today by taking roll call and call the meeting to order. I would like to ask Ms. Sangalang from the staff to please call roll to confirm if we have a quorum present.
Thank you. Commissioner Rudy Ortega Jr.
Here.
Commissioner Jacqueline Badejo. President Jacqueline Badejo. Commissioner Michael Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Oscar Monge.
Here.
Commissioner Monica Mejia. Absent. Commissioner Luis L. Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Dora Fritze Armenta.
Present.
Commissioner Alfonso Directo Jr.
Here.
First Vice President Antonio Sanchez.
Present.
Commissioner Jill Johnston.
Here.
Commissioner Ross Zellin.
Present.
Second Vice President Daniel Ferguson.
He has an excused absence.
Commissioner Lindsay Rose Medoff.
Here.
Commissioner Michelle Gutierrez.
Present.
Commissioner Imelda Padilla.
Present.
Commissioner Jocelyn Duarte. Absent. President Badejo, we have a quorum with 13 members present. 2 absent, or excuse me,
Awesome.
3.
Mhm.
Sorry, 3 are absent and 3 commissioner seats are vacant. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Sengalang. Since the quorum is present, I will call the meeting to order. Commissioners, if you wish to make a comment during the meeting, please use the virtual raise hand feature in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button in the navigation bar in Zoom. I will try to address the commissioners' comments in an orderly fashion. As a reminder, the internal chat feature, it has been disabled for this meeting. Okay, we can now move to the public comment period. The next item for today's agenda is the public comment period. And I will ask Ms. Guerrera Day from the staff to please let me know if we have any callers in the CAC for general public comment or for public comments on a particular item listed on the agenda.
President Badejo,
Yes.
there are currently 18 callers in the queue for public comment. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment, I will ask that you use the raised hand function on your phone. You may do so by pressing *9, and then when you are identified, you can press *6 to unmute your call, and please ensure that you state your name and the items you are commenting on. Okay, to begin, the caller with the phone number ending in 312, please press *6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself and state your name and the items that you are commenting on.
Hi, this is Alex Jassett. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. I'm actually not sure which item. It's the building decarbonization report. So I don't know if that's just general public comment.
You can have 2 minutes, Mr. Jassett, for
Okay.
general comment and then the item.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Alex Jassett, and I'm calling on behalf of Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles, as well as the LEAP Coalition. And I just wanted to start off by thanking Marcia Segura, the CEMO staff, Liberty Hill, and a really special thank you to Emma French for all the work that went into these reports and for recognizing and tapping into the expertise of local communities to inform this report. We also want to thank the Commission for their time and attention to this issue and for their deliberation today. We know that the city must take serious and considered action in order to combat both the climate change crisis as well as myriad other crises that the city faces, from housing justice to environmental justice. And part of the strategy should include equitable building decarbonization that supports vulnerable communities and improves the air and habitability concerns of the most burdened. For the last few years, we have been working in coalition with other housing, labor, and EJ advocates to ensure that the city's approach to building decarbonization avoids unintended consequences and fairly distributes the benefits and burdens of this transition. And a lot of that work has culminated in this report. So we believe that the CEMO report accurately lays out both the broad challenges that we face and provides well-reasoned recommendations to ensure that the city is taking an equitable approach to building decarb. And we highly recommend that you vote in favor of sending the reports to City Council. That said, we know that there are a lot of, we know that there are a lot of questions that remain and that the implementation of this process will require significant sources of funding and very detailed plans and oversight. So we look forward to continuing to engage with you all as well as the City Council as this moves forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Caller with the phone number ending in 748. You may press *6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you're commenting on.
Hello, this is Katie Campbell-Orrock, and I'm commenting on the same decarbonization report.
You can have 2 minutes.
Wonderful. So hello, everyone. My name is Katie Campbell-Orrock. I'm with the Building Electrification Institute, or BEI. We're a small nonprofit supporting the city of LA on building decarbonization efforts. And we just wanted to voice our support for this report. We think it's an example of the deep community engagement that local governments should be working toward, in particular by compensating CDOs for their expertise and creating space for mutual learning, elevating the concerns of low-income tenants. We believe this process has really meaningfully brought in folks who have historically been excluded from public decision-making processes. We also support the focus on affordability, health, anti-displacement, and the creation of an inclusive workforce, which we think is absolutely necessary for equitable building decarbonization. So we think this is a great step forward, and we hope that this type of engagement and accountability to LA communities continues as we design and implement policies and programs for LA buildings. So thank you all so much for work on this and for letting me put in some public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I would, Megan Ross, would you be so kind as to unmute yourself and state your name and the items you're commenting on?
*6.
Yes, this is Megan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. This is Megan Ross with the Natural Resources Defense Council giving comments on item 7.
Please go ahead. You can have 2 minutes, Megan.
Thanks. As I said, this is Megan Ross with the Natural Resources Defense Council. I'm here to request that the Commission vote to affirm CMO's report on equitable building decarbonization and deliver it to City Council. The report clearly accounts for the benefits, needs, and concerns around building decarb, as was expressed through the participation in CMO's public engagement process. The city needs policy and programs to improve building energy efficiency and climate resilience. And the report clearly states the conditions upon which communities would potentially support such actions. We need strong tenant protections that preserve housing affordability, access to good paying jobs that promote worker justice, public investments that distribute benefits to frontline communities without adding to their cost burden, and continued community engagement throughout legislation and implementation. It's incredibly important for City Council to receive this report from the Commission so that Council has accountability to these community priorities alongside other department reports on building decarb. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will the caller phone number ending in 312, if you'd be so kind as to unmute yourself and state the items that you wish to speak on?
I think we covered 312, Rebecca.
Oh, okay. I will lower your hand if you've already spoken.
Yeah, thanks.
Morgan Gonzalez, will you please unmute yourself and identify the items that you wish to comment on?
Hi, my name is Morgan Gonzalez. I'd like to speak on item number 7 for the report. Again, like many of my colleagues have said, I just want to thank the Commission as well as all of the work put in by our CBOs that have been relentlessly doing outreach with community as well as within ourselves and really trying to find a path forward. And I would just like to support the report and make sure that it is cemented and sent to City Council, as it is really a testament to this commission as well as the work done by CMO in gathering data and information and stories from community and putting that effort towards real sound policy into the future. Thank you, and yield my time.
Thank you, caller.
President Badejo, this is Executive Director Marta Segura. Please feel free to indicate how many minutes you wish to allocate to each of the callers.
Yes, thank you callers for your general public comment. You may speak for up to 1 minute for comments on agenda items, and you may speak for up to 1 minute on each agenda item and a total of 3 minutes. So 3 minutes total, as Executive Director Segura indicated earlier, that is sufficient. And thank you so much for your comments so far.
Great.
Do we
So just to clarify, President Badejo, 1 minute for general comment, 1 minute for item, and a not to exceed 3 minutes if you have 2 items and you want to comment on the general comment
Yes,
as well.
correct.
And so we're by default, if you would like 2 minutes, we will do that today, since this is our first substantive meeting and we want to be able to hear everyone. So just let us know if you'd like just to comment on the 1 item or you'd like the 2 minutes.
Thank you, President Badejo, and thank you, Executive Director Segura. Caller with the phone number ending in 390, please unmute yourself, state your name and the items you wish to comment on.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I was muted. Hi, my name is Tiffany Wong. I'd like to speak for general public comment and agenda item 7.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, hello, Commission. My name is Tiffany Wong. I'm calling on behalf of SCOPE. Thank you to the CMO staff and Commission for your attention to this topic and working towards a future where frontline communities like South LA are engaged and empowered to decide the climate future of our city. We appreciate the recognition of the interlocking issues that energy justice and building decarbonization has the opportunity to address if done equitably. We particularly uplift the need for consideration of holistic proposals that account for cumulative public health and environmental impacts, maintaining the right to safe, affordable housing and utilities, and creating pathways to good paying jobs for frontline communities. We express support for the CMO report as it provides a strong overview of our principles and a good roadmap of how to ensure equitable benefits and prevent potential harm on already burdened communities. And we highly recommend voting in favor of the next steps for this report. Lastly, community members were critical in guiding this initial discussion. And as we move forward with policy design and implementation, we want to see continued engagement, outreach materials, and decision-making processes that are accessible, sustained, center language justice, and are co-designed with community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Would the individual with the phone number ending in 253 please unmute yourself, state your name and which items you wish to comment on?
*6.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Kirk. I'm calling on behalf of Strategic Actions for a Just Economy, and I'm giving comment on item 6, the decarbonization report. I want to first say thank you, everyone, for your time today, and thank you for all the work that went into this report. You know, much work needs to be done to prepare for and address the climate crisis we're living in, and equitable building decarbonization is a critical step in the right direction. However, it really must be designed intentionally and carefully with consideration for vulnerable communities who are impacted by our existing housing crisis. I'm talking about low-income renters, specifically those who suffer from high rent burdens, who earn low wages, who continue to accrue rental debt, and who are at high risk of displacement due to market pressures. While there's a lot for them to benefit from this policy, they can also be harmed by unintended consequences. And I believe that the CMO report provides strong recommendations to ensure that renters are not harmed by this policy and that unintended consequences are minimized. And so I urge the Commission to vote today in favor of sending the report to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller. will the individual named Wendy Miranda please unmute, state your name and which items you wish to comment on?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to speak on agenda item 7, I believe. It's on the decarbonization report.
Great.
Yes. So yeah, my name is Wendy and I'm calling on behalf of Esperanza Community Housing as well as the Leap LA Coalition. I'd like to give thanks to Marta Segura, the CMO staff, Emma French, Liberty Hill for all their work that went into these reports and for recognizing and tapping into the expertise of local communities to inform this report. We know that the city must take serious and considered action in order to combat both climate change as well as the other crises that the city is facing, such as affordable housing and environmental justice. And part of this strategy needs to include equitable building decarbonization that supports vulnerable communities and improves the air and habitability concerns of the most burden. And so we believe that the CMO report accurately lays out the challenges we face and provides well-reasoned recommendations to ensure that the city is taking an equitable approach to building decarbonization. And we highly recommend that you vote in favor of sending the reports to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Badejo, there are no other callers in the queue at this time to provide public comment.
Okay, thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you all for your public comments and Ms. Rebecca and Executive Director Segura for helping to lead the way. And so I will now close the time for public comment and move to the next agenda item. So now we'll be moving to agenda item number 3, approval of minutes for the August 16th, 2022 special meeting. So for this item, is there any discussion and action for this? What I would like to do is request a motion and second to approve the minutes if there are no comments or questions for this commission, from the commission. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes from commissioners? Let's see. Okay, will anyone like to motion and second the approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you so much.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
So it appears President Badejo is frozen at the moment. So Vice President Sanchez, do you want to continue with the closing of the motions?
Yes, so should we take roll call? There was a motion by myself, there was a second. Was that Ross?
I was
Ortega.
Oh, thank you. So there was a second by Commissioner Ortega. So is this a good time to take the roll?
Yes, please. Michelle?
Commissioner Rudy Ortega Jr.
Yes.
Thank you. President Jacqueline Badejo.
We'll come back to her.
We'll
come back to her.
Okay. Commissioner Michael Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Oscar Monge.
Yes.
Commissioner Monica Mejia.
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Angel Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Dora Fritze Armenta.
Yes.
Commissioner Alfonso Directo Jr.
Yes.
First Vice President Antonio Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Jill Johnston.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross Zellin.
Yes.
Vice President Daniel Ferguson. Absent. Commissioner Lindsay Rose Madoff.
Yes.
Michelle Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Imelda Padilla.
Yes.
Commissioner Imelda Padilla.
I said yes.
Oh, no, I was just reminding Michelle to address you with commissioners.
Oh,
Coming through. Okay. Commissioner Jocelyn Duarte. Absent. President Badejo.
Yes, thank you so much.
The motion passes with 13 ayes, 0 noes, 0 abstentions, and 2 absences.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. We'll proceed to the next agenda item. Number 4, approval of minutes for the August 23rd, 2020 regular meeting. This item is for discussion and action, and I would like to request a motion and second to approve the minutes if there are no comments or questions from the commission. Let's see if we have any comments, any discussion. Okay, do we have a motion on the floor?
motion to approve.
Thank you so much.
Second.
We had a second as well. What was that? Okay, awesome. So Ms. Sangalane, may we please do the roll call?
Commissioner Rudy Ortega Jr.
Yes.
President Jacqueline Badejo.
Yes.
Commissioner Michael Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Oscar Monge.
Yes.
Commissioner Monica Mejia.
Yes.
Commissioner Luis Angel Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Dora Fritze Armenta.
Yes.
Alfonso Directo Jr.
Yes.
First Vice President Antonio Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Jill Johnston.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross Zellin.
Yes.
Second Vice President Daniel Ferguson. Absent. Commissioner Lindsay Rose Madoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Michelle Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Imelda Padilla.
Yes.
Commissioner Jocelyn Duarte. Absent. President Badejo, the motion passes with 14 ayes, 0 noes, 0 abstentions, and 2 absences.
Great. I
Thank
just
you
want
so
to,
much. Yes.
President Badejo, I just want to say that it does appear that Michelle's voice cuts off a little bit. So if you don't hear the title commissioner, that's probably because it cut off, not because she didn't say it. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. So would we like to reconfirm the votes for the record? 14 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absences, and 0 abstentions, correct?
Michelle? Yes, that is
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Now we can move to agenda item number 5, the executive director's report. Is there a report, executive director?
Yes, there is. Thank you,
Awesome.
President Badejo. And good afternoon, commissioners. I just wanted to probably reintroduce myself since we have public listening and an audience today. And I want to share with the public that I wear many hats and that the one that I'm wearing today is as Executive Director of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission. But I've also been recently designated as the Chief Heat Officer for the City of Los Angeles, which is an expansion of my role as the Director of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office. I am one of 7 in the nation and the first for the City of Los Angeles and the only Latina in the nation with that role. In this new capacity, we will drive collaboration to address extreme climate risks such as extreme heat with a seamless coordinated approach with various city departments and external partnerships. LA is experiencing extreme heat waves, historical heat waves, now from June to mid-November, and the frequency is much higher, which has catapulted heat as our primary climate hazard in Los Angeles, but especially most impactful in our most vulnerable frontline communities where the pollution burden is higher and pre-existing health conditions are higher. So I am grateful for your service, commissioners, and your focus on equitable climate policy and solutions. I wanted to also thank our staff that have done such a great job in coordinating the logistics of these meetings. Today is a turning point for CMO and this commission. We will vote on a substantive issue, equitable building decarbonization, and then we'll advise, and then after the vote, if it passes, it will go to our city council for the consideration of future policies on building decarbonization. They will also receive a report from DBS and LAHD and an executive director's report that we can talk about a little bit more later. So in regards to building decarbonization report, it is a report of community-driven recommendations, and the driving force for this building decarbonization report is the community input from the Climate Equity LA series. And it is these community-driven recommendations and the findings of the report that you will hear in the presentation today. The report summarizes the community voices of those we engaged on this issue. The council will consider the role of passive cooling systems, adaptive reuse, commercial buildings to be retrofitted in affordable housing areas, modular units for ADUs, etc. All of this is being considered by cities across the nation. However, those are topics that will be covered more in depth by the Department of Building and Safety and their report on this issue. What we will describe today has a community-driven focus and is wisdom that we want to ensure that we respect. Now, I'd like to give updates. Today, CMO launches our website, theclimate4la.org. And on that website, you will find a page dedicated to the commission. And more importantly, it'll help make sure there's greater participation, greater transparency, that there's a one-stop shop for going to this website for commission information and commission meetings. But I welcome you to surf through the rest of the website, as we have a page also dedicated to heat relief for Los Angeles and a description of all the work that CMO does and other ways for the community to get involved. And we'd like your feedback as our commissioners on our websites. We also recently launched and co-created the Cool Spots LA app, which actually has over 250 cool spots, including our cooling facilities for the city of Los Angeles. And it's going to be used as a tracking mechanism for our investments into cooling centers for extreme heat days. So now I'll talk about the next steps after today's vote. If you should vote in favor of the report, CMO will then transmit this equitable building decarb report to the city council. This also includes coordinating the report to be on the city council schedule before the end of the year. And why that's important is we're transitioning in the new year to a new mayor and some new council members. The council will also receive building decarb reports from DBS and LAHD from their parallel stakeholder engagement processes. The council will then deliberate on whether they are ready to motion for an ordinance on both new building decarbonization ordinance or existing building decarbonization. There is an equitable building decarbonization ordinance that has passed back, I think, earlier this year, Council File 21-1463, but there is no existing building decarbonization ordinance, and that is mainly what is being considered today. There is an agreement on the new building ordinance. This report today is historical and instrumental. As you may know, the council has been holding off on moving forward so that they can integrate the voices that are reflected in this report and the support of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission. And I'll talk a little bit about advisory powers, but it's definitely an issue that the city attorneys will address. Your advisory powers today are limited to advise the city council. And the city attorney will explain this in more detail. For example, on item number 7 on the agenda, the commission will be presented with a final draft of the report on equitable building decarbonization for equity-focused policy recommendations for the city of LA. Because this is a final draft, commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and provide comments and take action to submit the report for recommendations to the city council for adoption. As you all know, this was not the case for the draft report. So this is the first in a series of community-driven reports that you will hear. These reports are helpful to the commission in learning about the community's needs and priorities, but also because of your power to then advise the council to take these under consideration. Also, I hope this was helpful, and please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any further questions. Thank you. President Badejo, I yield back to you.
Why, thank you so very much, Executive Director Segura. We can move on. There's some great things going on. And thank you for hard work. And we can now move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 6. So it's the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission Advisory Powers. And here we have the city attorney. So now Deputy City Attorney Steve Martin and Lindsay Zwicker will give a presentation on the advisory powers of the commission and applicable local and state laws. So Deputy City Attorney.
Yes, is it possible for me to share a screen?
Yes, I will allow for that. Just a moment. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Just trying to share this. Hopefully this is showing. Try to put this in presentation mode. Is that working as a presentation?
Yes. Well, no, not presentation. It has a.
It just has the slides on the side, or how are you seeing it?
Yeah, it has the slides on the side, but it's very visible.
Okay, well, I'll just work with it, and hopefully you're able to read this. So I'll start out with the first slide here, just the CMC authority. We decided to bring this and request this as an item just to have some discussion for the commission, because I know this came up as a question during the last regular meeting. As far as having a draft report brought in front of the commission and then not being able to have discussion on it. I know that Commissioner Padilla had specifically requested for some advice as far as where the authority for this comes from and what are the constraints on the
Mr. Martin,
commission's action.
just before you continue, I wasn't asking for a request of what is an advisory role. I wanted to know where the law says that we're not allowed to comment on a draft report.
Okay, yeah, well, that's part of this. It's part of the authority of the commission and the limitations on the commission's authority for how it can operate. So that's part of this, and so we all know that came up at the last meeting for all that were in attendance, and I know that we had interceded our advice as far as not continuing to have discussion on it in the middle of when Commissioner Mejia was asking some questions on it. And I apologize if to the commissioners if they thought that there was something going on as far as us interjecting inappropriately into that discussion, but it is a part of the city attorney's job to raise points of order during meetings when there's issues of legality at issue and there's something that needs to be immediately addressed. So we will typically raise that as a point of order. We may need to quickly get into a discussion and say, hey, this is, not appropriate discussion. Not that you're being inappropriate or that you've done something wrong. It's just that we're trying to make sure that we stop the discussion when it's not an appropriate discussion, and we could get into hot water on it. So that's just one thing that I wanted to bring up out of the opening. So just to discuss what the powers are for this commission, well, the relevant part that we're talking about is City Charter Section 502A, which I've got up here, just the entire language of Section 502A, which deals with appointment and removal of commissioners. And so as you can see up here, it says that appointment, unless otherwise provided in the charter, commissioners of charter created boards and of standing commissions created by ordinance that are advisory to or manage a department or appointed office or perform regulatory functions shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to the approval of the council. And the mayor shall appoint commissioners of all other ordinance created commissions unless otherwise provided by in the ordinance. So what we have here is commissioners of a standing commission created by ordinance, which is what this commission is. And so if it's to be advisory to or manage a department or an appointed office, it would be required that the commissioners are all appointed by the mayor. In the case of this commission, there are actually 2 commissioners that are not appointed by the mayor. So that means the opposite of this, that this commission cannot be advisory to and it cannot manage a department or an appointed office. And so this was all brought together with the ordinance number 187126, which council approved last year, became effective on August 8th. And so what it does is it actually codifies those provisions of 502A in the city's administrative code. So now you can find in the LA Administrative Code, in these specific sections, different provisions that reflect that city charter section 502A. So section 22.1500 subpart C of that long division and chapter and article. That's where we see 17 commissioners have been mayor appointed. 1 has been appointed by the city council president and 1 appointed by the Eckinger chair. And the Eckinger chair has appointed 1. So 2 of those are by elected city council members. The other provisions, 1500 A sub AI and the sections 221510B and 221511 sub A, they state similar things to what's found in 502A, that the commission, CEMC, is not advisory to and does not manage a department. It shall not advise or manage CMO. And similar provision is found in CMO's authority, which is under the Board of Public Works powers in Chapter 13 of Division 22 of the LA Administrative Code. And that says that CMO responds to CEMC items that are approved by City Council and the mayor. So these are the legal constraints on how the operation of the commission can go on. It cannot manage or advise departments of the city because of these constraints. And the effect of an ordinance is similar to law. It is similar to a statute because the city is a charter city. It has the powers to pass ordinances, and these ordinances then take the effect of local law. So this is hopefully addressing the question that was presented. And I can just summarize up here as far as how things can go through the commission in terms of actions that can or cannot be taken. So with CEMC, you've typically got reports that would be coming in. So we saw last week that the report came in. We see there's another report this month that has come in. And so all reports going to the commission should be sent to City Council with commission's recommendations, the commission's recommendations in a related report. And any comments that the commissioners have can be made through the commission's deliberations on that report that's going to City Council. And the commission can decide what it should and should not report to council in that report and take action on that. Otherwise, we're in the zone of the commission should not be taking action. If it's a draft report that's not going to city council, there shouldn't be that discussion and action on it. And that's what we had at the last meeting, was a draft report that was not going to city council. And the reason that that discussion and action can't be taken on it is because the commission cannot advise or manage CMO because of those limitations that are in the charter that are codified in the administrative code that gives CMO, the commission, its powers. Now, that doesn't mean that all discussion is quashed from the commission at all on those draft reports. Commissioners can comment publicly in an individual capacity, submitting comment letters. We'd mentioned that at the last meeting, but just not as members of the commission. You can inform your communities and the entities that you're part of to comment on these public reports. So I'm certain that a lot of you likely did that and brought this up to folks that are in your neighborhoods and in your communities. But one thing that should not be happening is that you shouldn't be engaging the CMO director to make changes due to having a special seat as a commissioner. It shouldn't be using your commission position to bring comments directly to the chair that the public does not otherwise have. So essentially, you'd be advising the department as a single commissioner because of your special role as a commissioner on this commission. So we would advise to not take that approach, to simply provide public comment the same as any public commenter can make it. And so the last point here is that if as far as not having either having reports going to the council or having no action at all, the only other way to change this would be to have structural changes to how the commission is seated. The most efficient way of doing that would, of course, be removing those two members that are elected, that are appointed by the elected city council members. That's obviously not a great thing to be considering as far as having two folks that are already on the commission. But that's the one way. It could be changing the structure of the commission to be addressed after those folks are removed, or somehow having it so that those chairs are changed to have the mayor address them in a different way to appoint those chairs. Or there could be changes to the charter. I mean, that's an option, but it would have to go to the voters, and it's a highly unlikely. It'd be a much more laborious process of doing that, of going through the voters to actually create a CEMC that's charter created. And so the structure of the commission was considered when the commission was created. So this isn't an unexpected consequence that the commission has these limited powers to sending the advice to council. This is council formed the commission with these limitations. So I just want to be clear on that. I know that maybe some of you may have some questions about it. We're glad to help answer any questions we can to make this as easy a process for you if you have any questions.
And I just wanted to add one thing, in terms of possible structural changes. I mean, we understand that the prospect of removing two sitting commissioners might not be appealing. Another option is to simply wait until those two appointed seats term out. So until their terms are over, and then propose through an ordinance or propose to council an ordinance changing those seats to mayor appointed seats. So it would be kind of a medium term solution, but it's another alternative to removing two seats right now.
Mm-hmm. I see questions, President Badejo.
Yes, President Badejo, Commissioner Mejia raised her hand first.
Hi, everybody. I guess I'm still a little confused. I'm sorry, I am. So we're not allowed to advise the office, but aren't we recommending that the report be sent to City Council? So is that advice? Our advice is only going to the council? Is that the distinction that we're looking at here?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no. Sorry. I just wanted to give Steve a break. Yeah, you're exactly right. That was the intent behind the creation of the commission, was that it would be advisory to council. So any advice or comments on final drafts of the report are should be intended to be submitted to council. So one way that you
you said advice again, right? Because every time you said we're not advisory, so but when we recommend,
sorry, you are
that's the only limit of our power. We can either recommend or not recommend, and that's it.
You are advisory. Yes.
That's let me try to clear up the disconnect there. I think it's that you cannot be advisory to a department, but you can be advisory to city council. You can give advice to city council to recommend that they would do something, to recommend CMO take certain actions and whatnot. So it doesn't necessarily limit you from advising CMO, except that it has to be through the city council's powers and not your own.
And then for us to advise the council, as a commission, all of us collectively, how do we do that? Other than recommending the report, is there something else that we can do to advise the council?
Yeah. Stephen, Lindsay, can I repeat something that I was advised on? So, for example, concrete, today we're going to present this report. If you have recommendations on the report that aren't reflected on the report, you can say it publicly today, and then I will write an executive director's report, and I can include those recommendations in my executive director's report. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, that's correct. It's as far as this report today that's going forward, the commission could decide to provide a report specifically advising certain changes, certain actions, anything that it recommends under the sun, essentially within its powers of advising related to the climate change issues. So that report would run alongside the report that goes to city council. You could even suggest making changes to that report and then submitting a strike-through version or a completely different version. It's really the commission's discretion on what it wants to advise related to these items that it's taking action on.
Mm-hmm. And then, so the method to do that then would be via Martha's note taking is kind of what I heard, that otherwise we'd have to sit down and write a letter amongst ourselves and figure out how we're going to sign off on it. But essentially, it's a possibility that Martha could take some notes, and that those could be that wouldn't be advising the office. That would still be advising the council. It would just be that Martha would assist us in getting the advice out the door.
Yeah, correct. And Marta wears a different hat in that situation. She's wearing an executive director of the commission's hat. She's not serving in a role under CMO regarding its actions. She's actually working for the commission as its executive director and secretary.
Okay, well, I definitely have a comment I want to add, but that's all for my questions for the moment.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because I know if the way that if there are concerns or questions or comments, recommendations about these reports, the way that they would go back to CMO is if you prepare reports to council with the commission's collective thoughts and comments and recommendations on the report. Council then reviews them, takes action, and then council can in turn direct CMO to make any changes based on the commission's recommendations or advice. So that's just the path it would take. It would just have to go through council, but it could eventually come back to CMO.
And one additional path that could also take it, I know it's Commissioner Mahi is likely concerned, is that there could be complicated advice that you would be giving, and you wouldn't necessarily see all of that advice. And it would depend on Director Segura's ability to take notes on it. The other option would be to have Director Segura as executive director prepare a report and bring it back at a next meeting and actually have deliberation on that report that CEMC would be then forwarding to city council and have some discussion about the actual text of that report. But that adds a whole nother month into the process. So it's really up to figuring out how to coordinate that.
Right. President Badejo, Commissioner Imelda Padilla has her hand up.
You have the floor, Commissioner Padilla.
Thank you, President Badejo. So to the city attorney individuals, I appreciate this presentation and I appreciate the clarification of what is our role. However, I don't think that clarifying our role necessarily explains the interruption last month through the process when Commissioner Mejia had questions, I believe, related to statistics, I know, or something related to data. I wanted to ask a question related to format. So I get it. We as a commission can only make a recommendation to the council so that those recommendations can then potentially go to departments or wherever it is that they need to go, the mayor's office, wherever. However, this is a report that we asked Liberty Hill. In this case, I want to just refer to them as a vendor. We got a vendor to do this report for us, and now that they are almost in the final product, or last month they were almost going to give us our final product to be able to move on with the process of making recommendations to city council. I feel like we almost lost a month in not being able to ask Liberty Hill questions and being able to let them know what we had observed in the draft, so that by the time it came to us as a final, it would be more tightly put together so that we can then vote on wanting to send it to council. Because I don't perceive that just because we are told that a report is final, that it is then that we vote for it to automatically go to council. We're still, as a commission, as active people in our communities, going to ask questions and make recommendations to whatever vendor it is that we work with or community group to give us these reports. So it almost sounds like you're indirectly saying that we should have been able to ask questions last month. Or am I hearing it wrong? Or from now on, must our vendors always say, this is the final report, make some comments, it'll be final within amongst us, but then it'll take us a few more days or maybe another meeting before we're comfortable to vote it over to council? Is that what I'm hearing? That we should never have our vendors use the word draft again because it's going to keep us from discussing anything? Because that's what happened last month.
May I speak? This is Executive Director Seguridad, President Badejo. President Badejo?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. May I take the floor, President Badejo?
Yes, please. You have the floor, Executive Director.
Thank you. So there's another way of looking at this, and then after this, maybe the city attorney can respond. The reason we wanted to provide the draft is to ensure that there was sufficient time for the community to provide public comment, right? So I think, if I recall, the city attorney advised the commissioners that if there was something that you wanted to see that wasn't reflected in the report, you could provide public comment in that 1 month period. And that 1 month gives everybody the opportunity to make changes or recommendations to the report. That's the advantage of providing a draft. And so maybe now that the expectation is clear, we could just receive and file drafts and then get busy advising community to provide public comment on the draft, so that when we get to the point where we have to make modifications to the final, your comments, the community's comments are all there. But I guess that's the advantage I see to a draft, just to give extra time to the public to make sure that they read it. If we just provide a final, then that doesn't give the public the opportunity to have that month to review it, or 2 months to review it, right? So I'll leave it there, but I don't know if any of the deputy city attorneys would like to comment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that was just based on our discussions. I think that was the intended purpose of providing a draft before it was ready for the commission to take action on it, was just to allow you to go back to your communities and encourage other members of the public to engage through the public comment process, and then to give you the opportunity to engage as a member of the public as well. But the reason why we need to restrict even the ability to ask clarification questions is because we want to avoid any sort of slippery slope, so that, you know, if a pointed question is asked, that
Slippery slope, what do you mean by that?
So we're concerned that if somebody asks a pointed question of clarification, that could be perceived as a critique or some sort of direction to CMO to go back and make some sort of adjustments, even if it's just to do with formatting or clarification of within the report itself, that would still be that could still amount to advice. And so it's just and just in order to be safe, we just have to draw a bright line and say, you know, there just can't be any discussion. Otherwise, there's a risk of slipping into giving advice or giving an opinion on the draft before it's ready to go to council.
President Badejo, I also see a hand raised by Commissioner Mejia.
Yes, Commissioner Mejia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, President Badejo. I guess that, you know, I just sort of, I guess I'm disappointed about the whole process here and sort of what our role is here as commissioners. You know, we really don't have much of a role in the recommendation. We're recommending and then we're done. I don't know why we're meeting anymore after we recommend it. We can't comment on it, can't change it. I mean, I have some comments that I do want to make to city council, but I can go to the city council meeting as an individual and make those comments. And I would like to, if possible, you know, add them to for the executive director's role, you know, if there's the possibility of also putting the comments in a document you write, that would be great too. But our role as commissioners and in and of itself is very limited. I don't know if really this thing was set up to fully take advantage of us as commissioners.
Yeah, I also just want to say it almost sounds to me like
Commissioner Padilla,
draft.
Commissioner Padilla, and President Badejo, can we continue with the practice of recognizing the hands? And I also want to point out that we were scheduled to end at 2:30, but maybe President Badejo, could you please recognize Commissioner
Yes,
Padilla?
I was just currently looking at the participants to see who else hand was raised. So next we have first Vice President Sanchez. Commissioner Sanchez, would you like to take the floor?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. What I wanted to suggest, and processing everybody's thoughts and comments, so thank you for that. What I want to suggest is I do have some changes that I want to talk about. I have some comments that I want to make. Would it be helpful if we move the process and we can see how we can make some of those changes that we want to see? Because I do have some changes and I'd love to explore that process.
Is that okay?
I believe
my
you're talking
question
about
is if we
changes
can
to
move
the
the-
report, correct?
Yes, correct.
Not to the process.
No. My just to finalize my comment. So what I'd love to do is talk about how we can make those comments, the changes that we do want to see to the report. And maybe that's helpful. Maybe if we go through the exercise, not the exercise, but the process itself, we can see how we can move forward.
President Badejo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Commissioner and First Vice President. We now.
Could I make one more statement, President Badejo?
Yes, you may. You have the floor.
I guess just part of this is that city council asked for the commission to be created this way. I know Commissioner Mayhew had said that, she feels that it's somewhat a limited power, but city council did ask for the formation of this commission for a purpose. So these reports that are created by the commission, I mean, we have yet to see what happens with them. It is what city council asked for, though.
Yes, thank you so much, Deputy Attorney. Yes, I would like to just move quickly to the next raised hand. I see your hand, Commissioner Padilla, but before we move on, I just would like to also say something as well. I just want to say again, congratulations to all commissioners. This is a new commission. This is history that's being made. We are in a climate emergency, and to mobilize, this commission was created. And as I mentioned before, I know it's not easy. I believe a lot of the commissioners have experience in community engagement, and their boots on the ground. And I believe that we can be very effective. I'm sorry to hear that everyone is disappointed. Well, some people are disappointed, and I have, as I had to clarify some things for myself, I would say I kind of felt the same way until I realized and understood where the power is. So I just want to remind the commissioners of the power that you have in your positions. We can, remain on our strong points, the boots on the ground, and really mobilize the community and get them involved. And because this is the beginning of the commission, remember, we're kind of starting a little late, and things, kind of started late. We even lost all of our youth commissioners, right? We have work that we need to do. We need to get more commissioners to youth, especially to fill those roles. But at the same time, we also get the opportunity to build in this commission. And I want us to focus on building in this commission, especially from the information that we just heard and how we would like to move forward. And so with that being said, I just wanted to clear the floor and just remind everyone that we're still a new commission. We're in our infancy stages, and this is good, healthy conversation. And just take it all to heart, and so we can think of how we would like to design it moving forward. And I just want to commend, the city of Los Angeles. They didn't have to do it, but I know everyone, who worked so hard for it to come about, and they all believed in us. And I know that we will make them proud once we get through some of these things. And that's why we will be focusing on capacity building moving forward. And so I believe yes, Commissioner Padilla, I yield the floor to you, and then after you to Executive Director Segura before we move forward.
I just wanted to mention that it sounds like the draft phase or meeting where we review a draft is a time for us to mobilize our community to make comments. But it also sounds to me like the process is that we as commissioners will only be able to advise on reports that are final. So from now on, President Segura, I hope we should always ask folks, we should always see it as a two-part meeting, where in one meeting we'll have the draft, and we should mobilize our communities to make comments. And since we're supposed to stay quiet, today to me comes off as the meeting where we're going to review this final report, make recommendations to Liberty Hill. But it also sounds to me like we're not going to vote on something to go to council yet, because we're only now able to exercise our power as commissioners. And I'm not happy with this process. It's something that I have never seen in my 13 years being involved in commission work. I know I'm going to talk to city council members that I have a relationship with about how inappropriate I think this process is, but it is what it is. It sounds like draft is for the community, the final is for commissioners, and it's probably going to take us more than 1 or 2 meetings to be able to vote on a report from our vendor, our friend Liberty Hill, before we're comfortable enough to send it to council.
Yes, thank you so much for your comment, Commissioner Padilla. It is noted and on the record. Yes, Executive Director Segura, I yield the floor to you, and then I would like to say something for discussion.
Yeah, I think I'll yield to the next item. We can just move on to the next item because we want to make sure the commissioners have time to provide their recommendations publicly.
Okay, there's no more discussion, and so thank you, Deputy City Attorney. We appreciate your presentation, and we can move forward to the next agenda item. So we will move forward to agenda item number 7, present action of report from the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office, Department of Public Works, reports on equitable building decarbonization, equity-focused policy recommendations for the city of Los Angeles. And so this report, it will be presented by Emma French, a doctoral student at UCLA who worked both as a fellow then consultant to complete this project. Michelle Pichardo, Senior Director, and Andreas Gonzalez, who is the Program Manager from the Liberty Hill Foundation, are also present to respond to any questions from the Commission. And so this item is for discussion and action, and I'll request the staff to proceed with the presentation, please. Thank you.
President Badeja, before the presentation, I want to note that it's 2:13, and I want to beg the indulgence of the commissioners to stay beyond the 2:30 time so that we can provide the suggestions from the commissioners and also vote on the item. Otherwise, we're going to have to call a special meeting.
Yes, that sounds like a plan. I know that everyone's schedule is busy and we may be leading to a special meeting, but for now, if we would like to do a show of hands of those who can proceed past 2:30, if possible.
Oh, digital hands?
Yes, digital hands, and I can call them out. I just want to visually see. So we have the commissioners who are able to stay after 2:30 are as follows. Let's see, Alfonso Directo, Imelda Padilla, Antonio Sanchez, Dora. We have, that's Executive Director Segura. We have Michael Martinez, Luis Angel Martinez. So it looks like a majority, honestly. It will still be a quorum, most definitely. And because all of you are willing to stay, I will forfeit my schedule and I will also remain. Thank you so much. So that will be very possible. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Executive Director. Let's see, Segura. And so now we can proceed to the agenda item. Thank you. The presentation, forgive me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, President Badejo, and thank you to the commissioners. Good afternoon. My name is Emma French. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I will try to keep this as tight as possible, but I also want to make sure that the interpreter is able to capture all the information. So thank you again for your time. My name is Emma French. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Urban Planning at UCLA and a research fellow with the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office. So last month I presented a draft report on equitable building decarbonization, and today, as we've been discussing, I'll be presenting the final report, which incorporates public comments that we received related to the draft. So I'd like to just start by thanking the organizations and individuals who took the time to carefully read and comment on the draft document, as well as those who called in to provide comments earlier in this meeting. We have attempted to incorporate as many of the written comments and suggestions as possible into this final draft. However, we recognize that there are still points that need further exploration and investigation as the city develops building decarbonization policies. So what I'm going to do today is go through the final report, provide an overview, And so I'll be covering many of the same points as last time, but also weaving in some of the changes and additions that were made based on public comments. Next slide, please. So very briefly, the report context, as we've gone over before, the report was developed in response to a series of motions adopted by the Los Angeles City Council over the past year, calling for the development of a plan for building decarbonization for both existing and new buildings. The first of these motions explicitly calls for the creation of policies and goals that align with energy and housing justice principles, and I've included that list of principles from the motion on this slide for reference. The motion also called for the newly created CMO to conduct community outreach related to equitable building decarbonization and to present the findings of that outreach to the City Council along with recommendations based on those findings. This report attempts to respond to that call, and as Mr. Segura pointed out, really to lift up the visions and voices of frontline communities. And it's intended to help guide the city as it moves toward equitable building decarbonization. Next slide, please. So just briefly, the report is divided into 5 sections. The first section provides a policy context, which includes the sort of impetus for the report, as well as a list of relevant programs and policies related to building decarb in Los Angeles. The second section covers the broader equity and justice context and is intended to help policymakers think critically about building decarbonization within the context of the existing housing crisis, rising energy costs and widespread energy poverty, and persistent public health disparities, including those caused by environmental racism and the siting of toxic facilities in communities of color. The third section describes the methodology for the report, which included analysis of data collected during the inaugural Climate Equity LA series on building decarbonization, analysis of data collected during community-led targeted focus groups and listening sessions, interviews and discussions with community and subject experts, and a review of gray and academic literature. The fourth section provides an outline of the findings from that community outreach, and the final section provides 10 recommendations for how to move toward equitable building decarb. So I'm going to take the rest of my time, another 10 minutes or so, to go through the recommendations one by one. Next slide, please. Recommendation 1 is to include frontline communities in the design, implementation, and evaluation of all building decarbonization policies and programs. Meaningful engagement and collaboration with frontline communities is, as I think we all know, a foundational part of equitable climate policy and planning. We recommend that the city continue to collaborate with community organizations and coalitions such as the LEAP LA and Repower coalitions in order to learn from their on-the-ground experience and to ground truth proposed policies. We also urge the city to provide sustained funding to these CBOs for the outreach and engagement they do in frontline communities. We recommend that the city consider creating a building decarbonization community advisory committee to help bridge the space between multiple city agencies working on this issue and the community advocacy organizations that work in and with community. We lastly recommend that any future funding, policies, and programs related to building decarb should be brought to CMO and evaluated by the CEMC. And we hope that this can increase transparency and help to support community-led decision-making on all decarbonization initiatives. Next slide, please. Recommendation 2 is to leverage building decarbonization to improve public health and habitability. Based on what we have heard from communities throughout Los Angeles, building decarbonization should be approached as an opportunity to not only respond to climate change, but also to address existing public health disparities. However, we also heard time and time again that there's a need for this to be done in a way that does not overburden vulnerable communities, especially tenants and small landlords. We recognize that many existing buildings throughout the city, particularly older buildings, are already in need of upgrades just to bring them up to code and to ensure that they are safe and habitable. So as the city designs building decarbonization policies and programs, it's critical that we consider the full range of costs of holistic upgrades and ensure that additional costs do not fall on tenants or deter less well-resourced building owners from pursuing building decarbonization. Next slide, please. Recommendation 3 is to embed tenant protections in building decarbonization policies and programs. The City of Los Angeles should lead the way in advancing strong anti-harassment, anti-displacement, and other tenant protection policies. As we highlight in the report, current rent control and tenant protection policies in Los Angeles are not enough to protect the city's most vulnerable residents. Therefore, before adopting building decarbonization policies, particularly for existing buildings, the city needs to increase protection and support for tenants. We provide a list of actions that the city should take in order to advance housing and tenant justice. I'm not going to read all of them, but they're there. Next slide, please. Recommendation 4 is to embed affordable housing protections into building decarbonization. The substantial upfront costs of building decarbonization, particularly for existing buildings, has the potential to force small landlords and affordable housing providers out of the market, which could result in a loss of affordable units and increased corporate ownership of housing in the city. Ideally, we feel that building decarb presents an opportunity to expand individual and community-owned affordable housing through land trusts and other alternative housing tenure models. For example, we suggest the city create mechanisms for community land trusts to acquire buildings that landlords decide to sell due to decarbonization. We also suggest that the city advance inclusionary zoning and enact strong parameters for new buildings that would increase access to low-income tenants. Lastly, we believe this is a chance for the city to recognize that it's located on unceded Indigenous land and to begin to imagine what decolonization, rematriation, and co-management of land with Indigenous communities could look like in Los Angeles. Next slide, please. Recommendation 5 is to embed worker protections into building decarbonization. Decarbonizing all of the city's buildings and maintaining the expanded grid and new electrical systems will require an enormous amount of work and workers in order to ensure that historically economically disadvantaged and climate impacted communities benefit from and are included in the growing green economy. We recommend that the city advance enforceable labor standards to the greatest extent possible. These standards could include wage and benefit standards, project labor agreements, training and apprenticeship standards, targeted and local hiring requirements to ensure that jobs are accessible to workers living near projects, particularly those who've faced barriers to employment. Next slide, please. Recommendation 6 is to prioritize public funding for decarbonization in existing buildings in frontline communities. Federal and state funding for decarbonization has been allocated and it will be making its way down to the local level in the coming months and years. In order to begin to address persistent racial, environmental, and economic injustices, the city should ensure that at least a large portion of this funding is directed to frontline communities that are at the greatest risk of experiencing unintended negative consequences from building decarb and who already face unsafe housing and environmental conditions. In alignment with the National Justice 40 initiative, we recommend that the city require that at least 40% of federal, state, and local funds are directed to disadvantaged frontline communities, and that an additional 10% be allocated to projects that provide direct benefits to affordable housing. We also recommend that the city create a healthy building transition fund to collect funding for building decarbonization that can be directly distributed to frontline communities. Next slide, please. Recommendation 7 is to expand education, outreach, and technical assistance related to building decarbonization. These efforts should include outreach to tenants, workers, and building owners to help them understand and navigate this transition. It also involves conducting community co-designed targeted outreach to share resources about available incentives, financing, and other programs offered in Los Angeles. In particular, we recommend expanding and prioritizing LADWP's Community Partnership Grant Program for CBOs that are working on building decarbonization in frontline communities. And this could include increasing grant amounts and also creating options for longer-term funding to generally improve the connectivity between the city and CBOs that are providing this outreach support. Lastly, we suggest establishing an LADWP Promotoras program that hires residents from impacted communities to become specialists on building decarbonization. Next slide, please. Recommendation 8 is to leverage existing decarbonization efforts to gather data on the technical and financial requirements of this transition. Based on outreach that CMO has conducted, as well as additional interviews with policy and subject experts, there is a clear need for additional data on the wide range of costs and logistical challenges associated with building decarbonization at the city scale. Most of these concerns are of particularly strong for tenants, affordable housing providers, and small landlords. We recommend that the city request that LADWP, LADBS, and LAHD systematically collect, analyze, and share data from pilot decarbonization projects to develop a more detailed understanding of the costs, as well as other barriers, and to help provide evaluation of existing programs to identify gaps and opportunities. Next slide, please. Recommendation 9 is to design a flexible, equity-centered, multi-phased approach to building decarbonization. As the city develops specific decarbonization policies, we recommend that it explore different decarbonization policies for different types of buildings and different situations. For example, for new construction, it might make sense to create REACH codes, which could require the use of passive cooling design and all electric appliances and building systems for residential buildings and most commercial and industrial buildings. For well-resourced existing buildings, such as medium and large scale commercial buildings and medium and large residential buildings that were constructed since 1978, when the state enacted its first building code, it might make sense to create performance-based pathways, which could guide buildings toward emission targets and efficiency targets that increase over time. And for under-resourced existing buildings, which could include smaller buildings, residential buildings constructed before 1978, or buildings serving low-income and otherwise vulnerable populations, it might make sense to provide performance incentives that are focused on operational cost reductions and broader holistic health improvements. While a mix of strategies and policies will be needed to achieve widespread building decarbonization, it is vitally important that new policies are flexible enough to avoid unintended negative consequences, given the ongoing uncertainty about the full range of costs. Next slide, please. And the final recommendation, recommendation 10, is to identify all new and existing possible sources of public, private, and philanthropic funding to support equitable building decarbonization. This transition is going to require a monumental investment of financial resources to achieve emission reductions without displacement. We urge the city to consider all possible sources of funding, including, of course, federal and state grants, potentially restructuring various fees within the city, exploring green bonds, and potentially considering a parcel tax. In order to ensure that some communities are not left out of this transition, the city should also work closely with nonprofit affordable housing providers and CBOs working in frontline communities to explore all possible sources of direct funding to those communities. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for all of your time and attention, and I look forward to hearing your comments and questions.
Thank you, Emma. President Badejo, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation for this important agenda item. Do we have any comments or discussions, questions or answers? I don't see any raised hands, but if there are no further comments or questions from the commission, I would now request a motion and second to submit this report and its recommendations to the mayor and city council and recommended adoption. I'm looking.
President Patricia, there are a few hands up.
I see them now. I'm not sure who was first, but I would like to yield the floor to Commissioner Padilla.
Oh, I'm going first. Okay, so thank you for that. The only thing that is keeping me from potentially voting today to send this report to City Council is that, and I don't know if our friends from Liberty Hill can tell us, if we have time. I'm assuming we still do have some time. But what I would like to see is some stronger recommendations that can inspire council to push motions that will direct the departments to act. So what do I mean by that? In item number 6, for example, prioritize public funding and decarbonization for existing buildings and frontline communities. I think it would be great if there could be language that says council should push the chief legislative office to look for state and federal dollars that help us decarbonize existing buildings in the identified frontline communities, right? Based on, the data that's out there. And I think that can be done with some teasing and doing a political analysis of the existing departments, so that we don't just send a report to council that perfectly reflects what's in the desires and needs and fears of the community. But it would be great if we had something that will inspire them to write a motion with their staff, quicker, as opposed to reading it and just keeping it in the back of their mind before they become active to really put something into implementation.
Right. President Badejo, may I speak for a minute before Vice President Sanchez?
Yes, you have the floor. And then also, we always talk about capacity building, and so we're going to execute that currently on this call. I had an emergency that came up, and so second Vice President Ferguson, he will lead the meeting from now until I'm able to get back onto the line. And I thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So I just wanted to, before we move forward, remind everybody about the Executive Director's report. And for example, Commissioner Imelda Padilla's recommendation is something that we're taking notes on, and we could build your commissioner comments into that Executive Director report. And what that will facilitate is being able to move forward with the report today, because it is a community-driven recommendations report. It's not a technical legislative report. It's supposed to reflect the recommendations from the Climate Equity LA series. But if you have something like Commissioner Padilla, we could put it in my executive director's report, which will also go to the council as advisory from this commission. And now I yield to Vice President Sanchez.
Great, thank you. So I thank you. Thank you, Mrs. French, everyone that put a lot of effort into this report. I love the graphics. That's always helpful. And I love the format. I do want to read just a couple of sections that I think, let's say, maybe can be a bit more specific, maybe can include different language. Page 13, recommendation 5. It reads embedded worker protections into building decarbonization policies and programs. That's important, and I really appreciate that. I want to offer, and let me just find the language here that I wrote. So is it, I'll take guidance from you, Marta, or the city attorneys. Should I just read the language?
Yes, go right ahead.
I want to suggest, give me 1 second. Okay, so for that page 13, I'm just looking to be more specific. Local hire is mentioned in the expanded section of recommendation 5. I'd love to see that included in this brief sentence. So what I'm thinking is include workforce development approach with local hire, prevailing wage, and high road apprenticeship and journey level career paths. For my mission and goal, that's a bit more specific. And we mention it. We mention local hire. We mention prevailing wage. Worker protections are important. I was reading a Gallup poll that was released a couple of weeks ago, and unionism and union support for unions is at an all-time high since the 60s, which is very exciting. Two of the reasons Americans are expressing that support. The second is worker protections. So that's incredibly important. The first are salary and benefits. So I want to be able to include the salary and benefits, even if it's just in this sentence. I'm also happy to forward this in an email. And then I'm moving on to the other page. Page 38. So that's the section that includes recommendation 5 and more details about recommendation 5. One of the sentences that, thank you everyone for your patience. And I'm going to email this, but the end of the first sentence, I'd love for language to include policies must be strengthened to include local hire, prevailing wage, and high road apprenticeship and journey level career paths. That's in one of the sentences. I would also love to include, so part of our efforts will move workers, community members out of the fossil fuel industry that pays prevailing wage at the oil refineries. I'll be specific to the oil refineries. So I just want to highlight that as well too. In my opinion, it has to be a 1-for-1. The green economy has to offer that equal pay and benefits, or else we'll just fall short of our goals. So I'll send that language to you as well. And then the examples section, just find that here. Thank you for including those examples. Those are important. I'd love for another example to be included, and that's an apprenticeship program. So IBW Local 11 and the National Electrical Contractors Association offers a union apprenticeship program here in Los Angeles County. It's not a stipend. It's not part-time. It's full training and a full-time job. And I'd love for that to be included. I think these updates will require a highly skilled and trained workforce. Happy to send the citation to you, but I think it'd be most appropriate to include that, considering that That's our goal, high level, high road jobs. I'm just looking through my notes here. Everything else, I really appreciate it. I think this effort, I have a lot of concern with what this may do to renters, right? To the cost of housing. But this is something that we must do, and we must do that with them in mind, right? The most vulnerable communities. We must do that with them in mind. So thank you. I can send this over to you. You direct me who and how, and I'm happy to do it. Thank you. That concludes my statements. Thank you.
Chair Ferguson, we yield to you.
All right. Thank you, Executive Director Segura. I do see a hand up, and I see Commissioner Freyse Armenta, and then after that, Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you, Second Vice President Ferguson. I wanted to make a comment on one of the recommendations about if this particular decarbonization causes strain on small, I guess, not homeowners, but like building owners, that it was recommended that it would give like nonprofits in some way, like kind of first dibs on it. I would recommend that there is maybe a period or length of time where that is being offered to for nonprofits. The reason I say that is because a lot of corporations such as Zillow usually can wait that out, right? They can wait years and years and years and still be able to purchase multifamily buildings. However, nonprofits would not be able to as quickly gather that funding. And so if for some reason decarbonization causes strain on somebody who owns a multifamily property building and they decide to sell, possibly allowing or recommending a specific period where a nonprofit would be able to make the first, bid on the property. So whether it's 12 months, 18 months, whatever the case, just so that nonprofit knows how long they have to raise those funds. Many nonprofits don't necessarily have, a few $100,000 stacked away. And so maybe having that timeline would be able to, they'd be able to fundraise in that time amount, or at least create a sense of urgency. Like I said, other big corporate buyers it wouldn't matter how long, right? They would need, they'd still be able to purchase those really quite quickly. And so I think being mindful of the amount of time that you recommend to nonprofits, or that you allow nonprofits to make a first bid.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia, and then I'll have some comments as well.
Thank you, Vice President Ferguson. So my comments are on, let's see here, sorry, it's page 42 of the report, and it is, it's basically the second bullet. It relates to housing justice, and the city should, and right now it says advanced inclusionary zoning to increase access to low-income tenants. And what I'm seeing is that there really just is no teeth in that. There really is no, the market economy, the real estate economy of Los Angeles is just so powerful. And right now there's a bunch of community plans that are being evolved. I know the Boyle Heights community plan is right now in process. The downtown community plan is in process. There's a lot of community plans citywide. And they are looking at areas where new construction will be built. And in those areas, presumably some of those buildings are going to be decarbonized, the new construction. It's easier to build it that way from the beginning if you're going to target that goal. And it winds up being housing for wealthy people, upper income people, and it winds up causing displacement. And so the idea would be that could the climate emergency be enough of a rationale for the city to actually enact required affordable housing targets in all new construction? And those required targets match the income distribution of the people in the city, so that everybody has a chance to actually access the new decarbonized construction buildings. And presumably they're going to be located near transit. A lot of the community plans are now calling for that's where the new construction is going to be. And so to not have all those new units be occupied by wealthy people, but to actually make sure they're occupied by people of all income levels as it matches the city's proportion. And other than that, that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mejia. And I just want to add on to Vice President Sanchez's comments. Although we know that union jobs provide high road opportunities, also believe that there's a space for non-union or non-traditional apprenticeship opportunities as well, such as high road green jobs. And so I'll send my comments or recommendations rather in the email, but I definitely want to save space for some of those opportunities to be reflected in the report as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other hands? I don't see any other hands raised. Okay, so with that being said, if there are no further comments or questions from the commission, I will now request the motion and second to submit this report and its recommendations to the mayor and city council and recommended adoption. Vice President Sanchez.
I'm happy to make the motion, but I do want to ask the question to the team here, to the staff, that those comments were recorded and that they will be incorporated in the executive director's report.
That's a great question. Do we need an amendment, City Attorney, for the executive director's report to be submitted in addition to the building decarb report?
I think you have substantial discretion on what the commission wants to put into its report.
Okay.
Trying to get all of that into one concise statement will be a bit of a trick because there's so many comments that were made.
Okay, but we don't need a separate
if you-
motion for an ED report.
So if the director's report for clarification is to include all of the comments that were made, I think that would be simply fine if those comments are stated as comments of the commissioners. As far as it should be clear though that they are comments of the commissioners, or if they're opinions of the commission as a whole. I'm not sure if the commission has deliberated on that and made a decision on that, but we defer to the commission on what it wants to present in the report and how it wants to present it, as long as there is consensus on that, or a majority of the commission agrees to what is going in the report.
But also just so in terms of an amendment, that could be one of the recommendations from the commission to council, that they recommend to council that council direct CMO to take the report back and make those amendments. So that, that would be the path of that advice.
Okay, thank you. So with that said, I believe we should put a motion on the floor for the CMO office to draft a letter of recommendations from the commission. Is that correct?
It would depend if that's not a question for the city attorney. I guess it depends on what the recommendations are. I know that each of the commissioners had recommendations. I don't know if the body of the commission agrees to put forward all of those recommendations. It can, certainly can, or it can agree to do whatever it wants to do with those recommendations. It could just be simply stating them as individual commissioner recommendations. That's, I don't know what, we'll defer to the commission on what it wants to present. And so there are different ways of doing it. You could have a motion from each of the participants to make motions to add these to a report. You could do it as one amalgamated motion to just adopt everything that was stated as part of that report as recommendations from the body. But if you have questions, we can try to help answer those.
Vice President Ferguson, Chair Ferguson, I'm comfortable with an amalgamated combined motion to include all of those recommendations from the commission, if that is what you want to motion.
I would like to see it.
Commissioner Padilla, I'm sorry, I caught the last part.
I just wanted to say that I would like to second your motion.
Okay.
Including everything that we've mentioned.
Sorry, I don't think it, did somebody make a motion?
I think it was.
We initially made a motion, but I think I restated to ensure that it includes, it's amalgamated, including the recommendations going to be drafted by Executive Director Segura and the CMO office.
Okay.
If I could point of order, I think that the motion was from Second Vice President Ferguson to make a motion, and he's amending that a motion to add Executive Director Segura's suggestion to have an amalgamated motion that incorporates all of the comments. And then now we have a second from Commissioner Padilla. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Question and then vote.
Yes, and I just want to acknowledge Vice President Sanchez's hand. If you have any.
Thank you for that. Before you mentioned that, Executive Director Segura, I was leaning towards voting on each comment because one, I don't have all the language in front of me, right? I understand the comments were made, so I definitely processed that. But even specific to a comment that was made that not all the jobs should be union, I'd love to hear more about that because I don't know that I can support something that includes that type of language. So if that's going to be the case, then I would ask that we separate those motions because I don't know that I can support that. This has been a big challenge in our industry. We've worked very hard to make sure that solar pays well, that energy efficiency pays well, and that's not the case all the time. So I don't know that I can support that.
We may I speak? Chair Ferguson?
Yes, please do.
I think what I heard the city attorney say is like I can actually write the executive director's report and bring it back to a future meeting, and we could still approve the report presented today, and we could bring it back to either a special meeting, so that can be expedited, or we can bring it back next month. But I did want to advise everybody that at the next ECAGER meeting, on October 19th, ECAGER will be hearing the reports from Department of Building and Safety, Housing, and it's expecting our report on October 19th as well. And again, I wanted to repeat that we'll have a different city council in January. So we really wanted this city council and this ECAGER committee to consider these recommendations from the community. So I guess I yield to the city attorney to see if the recommendation that I just made made sense. Which is to separate the executive director's report from the or just to combine them and come back for a special meeting.
I mean, so what you're asking, I just want to be clear, I understand what you're asking is that you're asking if the recommendations can be sent as a separate report or submitted separate from the draft report. Is that where
No,
you're
no,
at?
there's, we have a final report today. So I'm
Right, yeah.
saying we could vote on the final report. And then also the amendment is to create a executive director's report to ensure that the recommendations from the commission are also seen as advisory to the council. So there's really two separate documents. And the question is, should we submit them as separate documents and then just come back for a special meeting for the executive director's report? Because now we have all of these options in front of us, right? Approve them together or approve them separately is basically what I'm wondering.
I mean, that's up to you.
It's up to the commission.
Yeah, it's up to the commission.
Okay, all right. So
Commissioner Padilla.
I actually would like to rescind my second, because the more I realize how the motion would have us move, I actually agree with Commissioner Sanchez that I wouldn't want to support any language that implies that I'm in favor of not having the workforce development piece support union jobs. So I'd like to rescind that. And I would like to say that just in general, I would support that our comments that in the executive director's report that she outlined that these were comments made by our commissioners and that they just read in that way. That way you don't lose what I said, what Commissioner Sanchez said, and it still allows for what Commissioner Ferguson said not be lost, but not necessarily voted on as approved by everyone. So is there any way that we could just go back to that? President Segura, is that you pledged, so to speak, to make sure that everything that we said is reflected in your report? And I don't think we need to vote on that, do we? It's what your report is, and you bring up what we brought up.
Steve, is that correct?
For clarification, it would be a report created by the executive director incorporating the commission's recommendations. So it's really the commission's recommendations drafted by Director Segura on behalf of the commission as it's scrivener.
Okay, so we can vote on the final report today and then have the commissioners review my draft executive director report. And then I could just, is that possible?
Maybe let me see if I can get clarity here. I think that what Commissioner Padilla had recommended is she wanted to withdraw her second of the motion, which then essentially creates, she's actually asserting an amended motion or a supplementary motion that would be to, instead of doing an amalgamated motion, it would be to do it as a report reflecting each of the individual commissioners and their voices. So it would be a report that specifically identifies Commissioner X said so-and-so, Commissioner Y said so-and-so.
Okay.
And so that's the way that the report would be written under Commissioner Padilla's motion. If there's a second for that motion, you could vote on that motion. If there isn't, you could still suggest other options or have discussion or bring it back to another meeting as others had suggested at a special meeting. That's another way of doing it, is to of course, Director Segura had recommended possibly having a special meeting before the 19th when the report needs to go to Eckager.
Okay. Thank you, City Attorney Martin. See Commissioner Mejia's hand and Vice President Sanchez. Commissioner Mejia, you have the floor.
I think the process now is for a second on Commissioner Padilla's adjusted motion, and if so, I second that.
All right, so just for clarification, the motion is to vote on the report, and then also for the executive director's report to be reviewed at a special meeting next month. Okay, Vice President Sanchez.
I just want to understand the timing. So we would have a special meeting. It might be helpful to even think about when would that be, to think about that now, just to make sure that we have that timing. My goal is to make that artificial deadline when all the other departments are going to present. I think that's important for us to be included in that meeting. So just looking at my calendar, Marta, did you mention the 18th or the 19th of October?
I believe it's the 19th.
The 19th.
Extra meets on the 19th.
Okay, I mean, we have 3 weeks before that. We should be able to find some time, right?
We should, but I thought that forgive me, Chair Ferguson, but I thought that I heard that the executive director's report doesn't have to go back to the commission.
That's what I heard too. Yeah.
So we could actually expedite the executive director's report without another commission meeting. And approve the final report today.
Just to clarify, I think the motion that was made was to have the executive director's report go back before the commission. So we just need to be clear what. So that was the motion.
My apologies.
Right.
No worries.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can amend the motion again to not have the executive director's report go before the commission.
Commissioner Padilla, going back to you, would you be willing to have the executive director's report not go back to a special meeting, but reflect the individual comments from each of the commissioners?
I'm comfortable with that.
Thank
And
you.
let's make sure Commissioner Mejia is comfortable still seconding that with that language.
Great, okay.
Commissioner Mejia, are you still second?
She might have stepped out.
And I'd like
another second.
Yeah, another second, please.
Vice President Sanchez, would you like to?
Before I do that, let me, I thought of another question, if it's appropriate to ask it now. And that is, if we were to meet again to discuss this report again, if it is not approved today, would the changes be reflected in the report? The changes that were suggested?
No, they would not be reflected in the report. They would only be reflected in the separate executive director's report. So whatever is presented before the commission today is what would go to council. And then of course that the caveat would be that, you have discretion as to what's included.
Then I second. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Ferguson, why don't you complete this vote and then we will transition to President Badejo.
And could we just get restatement of this? I just want to make sure everybody's clear on it. My understanding
that's why
is that it's an executive director's report that is incorporating all of the comments of the various comments that were raised by each of the individual commissioners, and that is all that it will state, is that there are statements that are recommendations by the individual commissioners, and that will be the executive director's report that goes to city council.
That's right.
Yes. All righty. So with that said, let me restate it. All right. We request a motion and second to submit this report and its recommendations, including the executive director's report that will reflect all of the recommendations provided by the Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission to the mayor and city council and recommend adoption.
Great.
We had a first from Commissioner Padilla and a second from First Vice President Sanchez. At this time, Michelle Sangalang, if you're here, you can take roll call to acknowledge yeses and nos.
Great. And while she's getting that together, I also need to say we need to vote on AB 361. And I know that you've indulged us, but if we don't, we'd have to come back for a special meeting anyway. So just wanted to put that out there. Michelle, please continue.
Yes. And we currently still have a quorum at 10. Okay,
Great.
So Commissioner Rudy Ortega Jr. Absent. President Jacqueline Badejo.
Yes.
Michael Martinez.
Yeah.
Absent. Commissioner Oscar Monge.
Yes.
Commissioner Monica Mejia. Absent. Commissioner Luis Angel Martinez.
Yes.
Dora Fritze Armenta.
Yes.
Alfonso Directo Jr.
Yes.
First Vice President Antonio Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Jill Johnston. Absent. Commissioner Ross Dellin.
Yes.
Second Vice President Daniel Ferguson.
No.
Commissioner Lindsay Rose Madoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Michelle Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Imelda Padilla.
Yes.
Commissioner Jocelyn Duarte. Absent. The motion passes with 10 ayes, 1 no, 0 abstentions, and 1 second with the absences. 1, 2.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, much appreciated. And so now the next item on our agenda is to make findings to allow the commission to continue teleconferencing meetings under Assembly Bill 361. This item is for discussion and action. I'll ask Ms. Guerrera Day from staff to read the findings into the record.
Thank you, Second Vice President Ferguson. The findings are as follows. The Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission hereby finds and determines in accordance with AB 361, Section 3E3, that the state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic as originally proclaimed by the governor on March 4th, 2020, remains active and or that state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, and the circumstances of the state of emergency continue to directly impact the ability of the members to meet safely in person, and or state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. Staff recommends approving a motion that adopts these findings.
All right. I invite, thank you, Ms. Guerrero Day. I invite any commissioners to make a motion and second the motion to adopt the findings.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Who second? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Commissioner Director.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Directo and First Vice President Sanchez. Ms. Sangalang, please take the roll call.
Commissioner Rudy Ortega Jr. Absent. President Jacqueline Badejo.
Yes.
Commissioner Michael Martinez. Absent. Commissioner Oscar Monge.
Yes.
Commissioner Monica Mejia. Absent. Commissioner Luis Angel Martinez.
Yes.
Commissioner Dora Fritze Armenta.
Yes.
Commissioner Alfonso Directo Jr.
Yes.
Vice President Antonio Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Jill Johnston. Absent. Commissioner Ross Dellin.
Yes.
Vice President Daniel Ferguson.
Yes.
Commissioner Lindsay Rose Madoff.
Yes.
Senator Michelle Gutierrez,
Yes.
Senator Imelda Padilla,
Yes.
Senator Jocelyn Duarte. Absent. The motion passes with 11 ayes and 5 absences. Vice President Ferguson.
Thank you, Ms. Sangalang, much appreciated. And so now this takes us, I believe, to the last item on our agenda. The next item is announcements. Director Segura, are there any announcements from staff?
I believe I made all the announcements in the beginning, Chair Ferguson. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. I'm glad I was able to make it. All right, any other announcements from commissioners? Any noteworthy mentions? Anything y'all excited about?
Well,
yes, Vice President Sanchez.
Love to defer to Alfonso Director. His hand was up first.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of talking.
No worries. Thank you. Quick question. Can we make a consent agenda in the future to encompass sort of the Assembly Bill 361 and minutes in one vote?
I defer to city attorneys on that one.
I think that would be fine, wouldn't it? Lindsay, do you have any issues with it?
We're asking if you can combine, like on consent calendar.
Minutes and AB 361 findings, although the findings should likely be stated.
Yeah, I think so. That no, this unfortunately, no, this have to be separate. The 361 has to stand on its own.
Okay, but there's no objection to like a consent agenda not including 361 if like there's two meeting minutes, for example.
Yes, and I think that we could have actually combined those to make them more streamlined if there wasn't opposition to it. I mean, it's more of I think a discretion of the chair to make that call on the fly.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
So that's great questions.
But yes, great suggestion.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Director. Vice President Sanchez.
Briefly, I just want to thank everybody. This was a fun process, and I do believe that we're doing good work for the city of LA and for its residents. Lowering our emissions will not happen by accident. So we need these efforts. We need these collective efforts. Finding shady places, right, and make sure that they exist. That will not happen by accident. We need to make an effort to include that. And also creating good jobs will not happen by accident. I'm very happy that I'm proud that we're able to do that here in the city of Los Angeles. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vice President Sanchez. I share those same sentiments. Any other announcements before we adjourn?
Yes. So I just want to say thank you to all the commissioners, the CMO staff, executive director for this successful meeting. Thank you all the commissioners for participating and working through this. And I know that we're going to build our capacity and we're going to do great things with this commission. It was some excellent recommendations and I can't wait to review this video so I can get back on track with you guys. So please take excellent care of yourselves and we're going to be reaching out so we can really organize ourselves and make sure that everyone's comfortable in their position. So thank you for clarifying, City Attorney. That really helped. And man, take care, everyone, and see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will now adjourn the meeting. The next meeting will be our regular meeting scheduled October 18th at 1 p.m. With that, this meeting is hereby adjourned. You all have a wonderful remainder of your day and week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.